FudgeMuppet's positivity video about TES6 is actually a doomer video. Toxic positivity is not hopium, it's copium. The exact things he lists as the possible positives and things that give him hope are the things that ruin Starfield and that will ruin the Elder Scrolls 6 Akavir. Just kidding, the Elder Scrolls 6 Hammerfell.
Michael and I have been waiting for the Elder Scrolls 6 since we first put hundreds of hours into Skyrim when we were 15 years old, followed by thousands more hours in the many years since. We started this channel with Skyrim builds in 2013, and we have videos of us sitting in front of a camera way back when talking about Elder Scrolls 6.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Elder Scrolls 6 videos.
And today we're looking through Valenwood for Elder Scrolls 6. Alright, what's up guys? It's Michael and Scott here with FudgeMuppet's latest video.
Hello, and welcome back to an Elder Scrolls 6 video.
And it's not only discussions, we've made hours worth of Elder Scrolls 6 ideation videos which conceptualize entire games, with some of our most recent efforts being incredibly in-depth, but let me tell you this. Fear, gloom, and doom is at an all-time high. Bethesda has changed a lot since the days of Skyrim. Now, I'm typically a big optimist, an ideal Elder Scrolls 6ist, if you will. But losing people like Kurt Kuhlman is enough to even shake that optimism. It can be said that Kurt Kuhlman and Michael Kirkbride defined the core of what the 21st century Elder Scrolls series is, with their huge contributions to the conception of Morrowind. I'm sure you would have all heard Michael Kirkbride mentioned many times, the mind that introduced many of the weirder aspects to the Elder Scrolls lore. But Kurt Kuhlman was just as essential to the foundation of the Elder Scrolls series, and arguably he left way more of an imprint than you may at first realize. Notably, Kurt Kuhlman was the co-lead designer for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim alongside Bruce Nesmith, and this quote from Michael Kirkbride on Reddit attests to his importance. Kurt was the best writer that Tez ever had. He was a torchbearer of keeping Tamriel's more unique qualities and ideas alive. No surprise, as he came up with so many of them. His leaving will be to the creative detriment of 6. Such a massive mistake letting him go. With Kurt gone, my faith in the Elder Scrolls 6 has cratered. I want to look at some of the reasons to remain excited about the Elder Scrolls 6, so strap on your hopium masks and breathe very deeply with me. Skyrim is unique. Even today, there is no game that really captures the exact same experience, and honestly, I'm kind of amazed there aren't really any successful copycats of the formula. There are many games that excel leagues beyond Skyrim in RPG elements, storytelling, and many other aspects, but there are none that deliver all of what Skyrim does in equal measure. Therein lies the magic, the sum of the parts, the experience that we all fell in love with. Let's talk about RPG elements. You hear about this for every game. I start to feel as if the term RPG is less useful as time goes on, but I want to split the genre into two kinds of camps for the purposes of our conversation. Firstly, there's the classic RPG, largely derived from the tabletop. The classic CRPGs like the OG Fallouts, Planescape Torment, Arcanum, Baldur's Gates, and so on. While most 21st century RPGs start to streamline more so and dial down the overwhelming complexity, I feel as if the template is the same. Choice, consequence, a story and experience that goes from A to B, start to finish. There is way more narrative potential within this style of RPG. Look at Baldur's Gate 3, an incredible game with a huge amount of flexibility from a role-playing perspective. A proper 10 out of 10 game, but it's still not the same type of game that Skyrim is.
RPGs had complexity no Elder Scrolls game ever had. But Morrowind is real close to that level, with hit chance and damage formulae. But it's disingenuous calling it dice rolls combat, because you, the player, have agency over every variable in the hit chance and damage formula. You can attack many times in fast succession. There is no turns like in turn-based CRPGs. It's a reflection of the strong, solid RPG foundation of attributes, class, skills, race, sex, birth signs, weapon, weapon material, weapon reach, weapon enchantment, weapon durability, enemy race, attributes, etc. There is no way in hell modern Bethesda and Microsoft would ever make such intricate RPG systems for any of their games. It will be perks and stuff like in Starfield, Dragonborn shouts, Starborn powers, perhaps a trait or two, and that's that.
It's not trying to be either. I love these kinds of RPGs, like Rogue Trader, Dragon Age Origins, or Knights of the Old Republic. You are experiencing a guided narrative. There are set roles and act structures to the game, and also typically a finite end. It's like a D&D game. There's a game master who is guiding the narrative experience for the player. Reactive, yes, but it is guided to a finish point. In gameplay terms, this is usually guided through an order of quests and hub-focused areas. Of course, following Skyrim's success, there were many games that insisted on pushing open worlds into everything, but they still didn't capture what Skyrim offered. Simply attaching an open world to Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't suddenly make it Skyrim, and I'd actually argue that tacking on open worlds to many RPGs actually makes them worse. Open worlds are fantastic, I love them, but they actually have to be utilized in the core experience, otherwise they just become empty space, a traversal nightmare, a chore. What I mean is that in Skyrim, the open world isn't just window dressing, it's a vista of potential, a place to go and discover which rewards you each step of the way with some new detail or dungeon or encounter. The open world of Skyrim is the main selling point for many, and on top of that, the idea that you can be who you want and bring your own creativity to your experience of that world. You choose who you want to be. You choose where you want to go. You can just get through Helgen and disappear into the wilderness, taking your own personal story in unforeseen directions. The main story or various questlines are secondary or merely one part of the core experience, not the defining elements. They are more like suggestions, things you can do if you want. It's your adventure, defined by you. There is no game master putting you on the rails. To be clear, rails are often great, specifically for classic RPG styles, but the absence of them opens up a world of possibilities that aren't available otherwise.
Optional quests and random things you do around the world are to get more loot, get more levels, get more power, so you can be powerful enough to complete the main quest. Unless you are role-playing as a peasant, or you imagine you're playing GTA and are there for the sandbox and action figures.
Todd Howard has said that he wants The Elder Scrolls 6 to be the ultimate fantasy world simulator. And that actually kind of makes me excited. It adequately describes the second kind of category of RPG that I am both arbitrarily defining and think is rarer on the whole but still out there.
The ultimate fantasy world simulator. Those words by Todd should be instilling dread into any fan of Elder Scrolls. Why not penultimate? Remember when Starfield was supposed to be the ultimate NASA-punk space simulator? To be played for decades? But then it died and Sharded Space didn't revive it, as players just bounce off from it.
Instead of having a game master, it's like you are both the player and the GM. You decide the narrative, you decide where to go, what to do, and the world is full of quests and experiences that you can do in your own order or not at all. There is a ridiculous amount of role-playing freedom to be had here, but it's up to you to bring it to your character. You have to think about what your character would do, where you want to go, and so on. You have the closest thing to a blank slate. You are a prisoner, pick one of 10 races, and you're just let loose on the world. Of course, there is critique. Yes, the quest lines could be drastically improved, character creation refined, more RPG features embedded, etc. and so on, but I just want to highlight what sets Skyrim apart from other RPGs and why it's still so addicting. There are disadvantages to this style of game, especially if telling a highly narrative-focused cinematic experience with guided character arcs and emotional beats, but that's not why we play Elder Scrolls games. The Elder Scrolls is less concerned with you as a character, but far more interested in the world as a character, the environment as a character, and your experience of it. You see the memes about how nighttime at Skyrim hits different with, Secunda playing as you walk for miles under auroras. There's an enchantment to the world itself. People don't often talk about the quests or the characters in Skyrim. It's usually the serendipitous moments, a random dragon attack on a mountain, or when you found a cool unique helmet at the foot of a statue after wandering for hours, or when you died against an enemy 3 times and finally loaded back, successfully killed him, soul trapped him, and made him into your favorite enchanted sword. These are the moments that make Skyrim Skyrim. It feels closer to the kind of fun you would have as a kid, where you and your friends are at the park with sticks as swords, coming up with all kinds of wild lore, the free-flow nature of that kind of child's play. You aren't reading a story, you're participating in a shared illusion. It's like a game of improv within an established setting. Michael and I as kids were in love with Star Wars, and we had our own Jedi Academy at the park, and we'd just hang out and play, and in time a narrative would emerge one step at a time, but it wasn't authored, or at least intensely authored. Potential is a key word that I think is important here. Skyrim is a world of potential for you to play in, but it requires initiative on your part. You will have heard the quote, "Skyrim is as wide as an ocean, but deep as a puddle," but you may not have heard the retort, "Skyrim is only as deep as the person playing it."
Skyrim is only as deep as the person playing it. Does a procedurally generated dungeon full of Druger you go into on a procedurally generated quest become deeper because of your personality? Such intoxicating narcissistic arrogance. The under-the-hood complexity matches the level of complexity you see in Skyrim. It's not like in Oblivion and Morrowind, where there is much, much more going on beneath the surface. And that's how Skyrim is across all of its aspects. The story, the setting, the factions, everything is according to the "you get what you see" philosophy.
And it's a sentiment that I tend to agree with. Now, I'm not saying if you don't like Skyrim, you aren't a certified deep thinker. This isn't some kind of elitist take. Some people just won't click with this type of game, and that's perfectly fine. Some people don't jive with this kind of design, and instead prefer more narratively rich, character arc-focused choice and consequence style RPGs. I adore both styles of games, but they're different feelings. And the Elder Scrolls games become addictive when you can bring more of your own depth to the game. I could just play a Nord named Scott and do everything in Skyrim and walk away saying GG and never play it again. But I could also make a Telvanni wizard named Revan Serethi.
You cannot make a Telvanni wizard. Pleb, you need to be able to levitate to become a Telvanni wizard. Hundreds of Skyrim builds? Stealth archer warrior that throws a spell occasionally? Camouflaged bowman fighter mage?
Who was a Dunmer wizard dispossessed and betrayed by his former master, ending up embroiled in a border skirmish at Cyrodiil, who then goes on a pursuit of power no matter the cost, leading him to make deals with Daedra and bend any morals in the pursuit of knowledge, and driven by the desire to never be in a position where he could be so easily discarded. I bring that to the table myself. The hundreds of Skyrim builds we have made since the inception of this channel are examples of similar experiences that we've had. Elder Scrolls games invite you to create in conjunction with the game. It's the sandbox, the playground. And we also just have to thank the countless mods and mod authors which have contributed to further facilitating niche experiences with new systems, armors, world overhauls and such. Don't get me wrong here, Skyrim is a 2011 relic, and there are many improvements and criticisms to be had. I'm merely trying to illustrate the distinctive design philosophy that sets it apart from other RPGs. An ideal Elder Scrolls 6 would keep the same design philosophy, but just execute on all of the elements better. However, if you ditched the core design philosophy and tried to go for a more directed experience, it would suffer. It just wouldn't be Elder Scrolls in the same way. Fun fact, one of my favorite games as a kid was The Sims 2, when it came in a disc with a pizza from Pizza Hut. I got hooked and then later got Sims 3. I loved them, and funnily enough, there is a similar core experience here. The simulation aspect. You are given a sandbox to play in with your toys. You contribute to the lore with your creativity. In Sims, you create a character or a family and drop them in a town, and then it just rolls on. You bring the character arc, the backstory, and so on. You develop the tale. You are the GM again. I think in some sense, the core enjoyment I get from a game like Sims carries over to the reason why I clicked with Oblivion at 11 years old, and then later Morrowind and Skyrim and so on. They are games that are almost like a sandbox playground for your inner child to run wild on with your own creativity and pursuits. Another example I have is a game I was properly addicted to. I legitimately had to uninstall it so I couldn't easily jump back in. Kenshi is a level by doing squad-based RPG RPG with real death, and it's super punishing but also so rewarding. It's an incredibly interesting world, but basically zero story in a questline sense. You can pick from multiple starts, pick your race, and get kicked out into the world. Go figure it out, champ. I just love it so much.
Sims player with a feminine wired woman brain irrationally wants new TES to be more Sims-like, even more casual Skyrim 2 sandbox. Kenshi is a respect-deserving game, and to many, it's the Morrowind of current era. But don't be mistaken, Kenshi is not something Bethesda Microsoft can produce. And even if they could make their version, Kenshi is not capturing that magic of Morrowind and Oblivion.
Provides so much freedom for your creativity. I've made trading caravans, mercenary warriors, hashish peddlers, illegal distillers, ninja assassins, an augmented superbug army. There are so many possibilities, and it's such a cool world. The core appeal is being who you want and experiencing the main character, which is the world itself. Your experience in the world generates the narrative arc. So when I hear Todd Howard say he wants Elder Scrolls 6 to be the ultimate fantasy world simulator, that actually feels like a good indicator to me. Look, remember, just keep the hopium mask fitted nice and snug. The Elder Scrolls world is obviously an amazing setting with tons of vibrant lore and amazing experiences to be had within the worlds themselves. But the open world sandbox nature of the games is integral to the Elder Scrolls vibe. It's a major reason why Elder Scrolls Online did not click with me or many other fans of the Elder Scrolls. ESO has expanded the lore in many great ways, as well as some not so great, and from my understanding of people who regularly play the game, it seems to be a really fun MMO, but it misses the core Elder Scrolls gameplay experience for me. It doesn't simulate a fantasy world in the same way, rather it feels more like an interface for the world, like it feels too consciously like a video game to me. In part, this is due to the format. With other players running around the joint on their zesty mounts, it starts to break immersion, but also the sort of theme park-sized proportions of ruins and cities to accommodate multiple players. I mean, look, it's an MMO. You're gonna have to sacrifice some level of intimacy and immersion in order to make the game you want to make, but for these reasons, it's not a replacement for the single-player Elder Scrolls experience.
I agree about ESO. When ESO was announced, the dreams and hopes were high. Players imagined a multiplayer Morrowind, where you can be a member of the Imperial Legion and maybe attack with other players in the faction, like hundreds of you raiding a Dunmer stronghold. Imperial Battle Mage casting Water Walk en masse to go over a river, Imperial Archers providing cover fire, etc. None of that materialized. We got a slop MMO, themed with Elder Scrolls theme.
What I'm trying to emphasize here is that the special sauce of the Elder Scrolls games is not found in a better story or best written dialogue, though all of these things would be more than welcome improvements, but it is in the facilitation of the player's fantasy and all of the possibilities therein. We've harped on before about reintroducing complexity into the RPG systems of the Elder Scrolls, but this is not out of arbitrary desire that says more numbers and perks means a better game. In fact, I'm really pro accessibility in games. I like games to be easy to grasp and play at the outset, but with layers of complexity and depth there as you get further into the game for those who want to get really creative. But the main reason I'm pro reintroducing complexity to the RPG systems of the Elder Scrolls, whether that be attributes or more spells, more skills or what have you, is because more options creates more possibility, more potential niche characters that you can inhabit in the ultimate fantasy simulator. It's something that modders have been introducing for years now. Think of mods like Wintersun that bring god worship and unique build opportunities, or mods that allow you to have your own fort and village, role-playing a Thane or something. At the same time, I don't want there to be stats for the sake of having them. They should have meaningful interactions in the game world. Have a language skill which has perks or branches for Daedric or Lost Elven races which allow you to play a scholar and solve puzzles to get unique weapons or uncover niche lore or unlock new dialogue options or solutions and certain quests.
Reintroducing complexity into RPG systems of the Elder Scrolls Pro. Accessibility gamer, he likes games to be easy, grasp, and play, but with layers of complexity and depth for hardcore gamers. Main reason of reintroducing attributes, classes, skills, spellmaking, armor variety, etc. is to have more possibilities to roleplay. More roleplaying in the ultimate fantasy world simulator. Stats having meaningful interaction with the game world. Bro, this is Microsoft Bethesda, the developer of Starfield, we are talking about. In Pro Evolution Soccer 6, players have age, height, weight, stronger foot, position they know how to play in the formation on the pitch, and dozens of physical and mental attributes, stats, skills, and perks. Each of those is fully modeled in the game under the hood, and is obviously felt when you use that player in-game during football matches. It's deep RPG system applied to a sports game. It includes morale and a fatigue bar. Most importantly, the game has a simplified bigger picture profile of every player. One screen where you see the 6 most important aspects of that player: his speed, power, technique, attack, defense, stamina, and technique, his height, age, foot, and positions. By taking a glance at the simplified profile screen, you can know the gist of that player and play the game using just that. You will never be as competitive as the players that operate with knowing all the intricate stats, that know the exact speed, acceleration, responsiveness, etc.
As much as the Elder Scrolls games are fundamentally different to games like Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of the core experience, that being an open-ended open world versus a narrative arc, choice and consequence focused game, the Elder Scrolls can absolutely take more away from Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of how it implements expressions of your character's race, background, class, and skills and so on. Indicators that the world is reacting to who you have chosen to be. When you choose to be an orc conjurer, the world should react to who you are and make you feel like you have made a choice different to being a wood elf assassin, even if it results in something uniquely punishing for a character. The player will feel great because the game is recognizing who they have chosen to be. A classic example, which I think was originally intended for Skyrim, is being a Dunmer or a beast race in Windhelm. Imagine if Nord gangs tried to actually attack you at night, or guards tried to extort you. Some kind of reactive feedback here would help further define the experience of the player depending on their choices. The entire tone of Windhelm for some Nordic barbarian might feel noble, ancient, and awesome, very positive, as opposed to playing a Khajiit who constantly gets harassed by xenophobic drunks. Lore-wise, it's said that Khajiit caravans aren't even let inside the city. Now, that will be a very drastic drawback if applied to the player, but again, there could be some little side quest about a clever workaround, and adding a unique Khajiit path, quests to be done with the caravans, access to unique goods and dialogue. This kind of thing both makes the player feel recognized by the world and provides them with a unique experience. Choice is not just about what dialogue option or who to kill in a quest. It's about the very character they've chosen. They want to feel the difference between playing an Imperial Centurion devoted to the Nine and an Argonian Shadowscale.
Khajiit, or Dunmer, being discriminated and oppressed because of their race by Nords? We cannot have that in current year. Think about the political activists, Tumblerinas, and fat HR Karen's fragile feelings. This is not giving hope. What he is saying is in conflict with reality, and it destroys hope for the Elder Scrolls 6. Imperial Centurion equals fascism. Argonian Scaly equals diversity and inclusion. We do not mention the Argonian war crimes in Blackmarsh, or their genocide of smaller races.
We have had some really positive signals from Bethesda regarding role-playing in terms of character ownership. For example, Starfield reintroduced classes of a sort through backgrounds, which gave you both in-game dialogue recognition of the background as well as starting skill boosts and initial ranks. They also implemented traits, which had a variety of in-game impacts that I really enjoyed. For example, it was awesome to start as a criminal archetype character who chose the wanted trait, and it actually has you being tracked down by bounty hunters, changing the world encounters. These kinds of options are perfect. Though, if anything, I'd like to see more of these type of traits, ones that change your actual experience of the world depending on the character you've made. I'd personally like them to go even further. Also, Oblivion Remastered showed that they could do old-style attributes but revamped and streamlined. I really like the remastered leveling of attributes. Simple allocation of your attribute points at level up instead of the whack leveling system of OG Oblivion. Plus, the idea of having subcultures in character creation is really cool. Yes, in reality
There are no classes in Starfield. Backgrounds are superficial at best. Neon Street Rat doesn't make you start the game as the actual Street Rat in Neon, and to try and climb some gang hierarchy, or claw your way into Ryujin Corpo world to get a spaceship and chance to somehow end up in the constellation. It's just a footnote, a small bonus, nothing more. Long hauler pilot background doesn't make you start as an actual spaceship freight pilot. It's not Dragon Age Origins. Man, it's just a footnote and a couple perks.
We're just replacing the gender differentials, but I like this. I'd rather be able to create a more martial-oriented female orc or a more intelligent shaman Argonian male based on my subculture background, instead of being restricted by gender. I'm typically pro-character creation freedom, but at the same time I want my choice of race to actually mean something both in gameplay and role-playing. I think this is one of the most important things that they could do for Elder Scrolls 6. If they really want to make Elder Scrolls 6 the ultimate fantasy simulator, double down on that idea. Races, sub-races even, cultures, backgrounds, origins, traits, and make them all mean something in the world. Have it react to who you have chosen to be in Tamriel.
Restricted by gender? The exact opposite is what happened in Oblivion Remastered. Instead of having more combination in the character creation, you have less. Instead of having a uniquely female perspective on the fantasy world of Cyrodiil, you have a bland, androgynous slop experience, regardless of Type A or Type B choice. So that binary choice is removed, and when you do that, the number of combinations drops in half.
Anyways, the point is, there are actually some really good indicators peppered around the place, plus Todd Howard himself saying the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a sort of return to form for them, to the types of traditional Elder Scrolls experiences you'd expect. It's a good sign. I mean, it's a long, hard lesson, but look, if they simply made Elder Scrolls 6 after Fallout 4, we wouldn't be in this mess, but there's no point in doing the whole shoulda, coulda, woulda thing. Based on stuff insiders have said, plus all the news of Xbox and Bethesda layoffs, I just won't be surprised if we don't see Elder Scrolls 6 until 2030. I was optimistic for a bit about a 2028 release date, but I just can't see it happening by then. I'd love to be proven wrong. Even Elder Scrolls Online has rolled to a halt in terms of expansions, each of which were contributing to keeping the lore fresh, even if you were not into playing the game itself. But I tell you what, as much as the lore is incredible, the real beauty of it comes in the interaction with the lore through the game. And I don't mean just reading books about it or hearing about it from characters, I mean embodying it. Role-playing as a character you chose who does X because of Y, who becomes an assassin of the Dark Brotherhood to one day get vengeance on the Morag Tong who murdered your brother. The lore's value is in shaping the contours of your experience in-game. And for a long time now, the community has been without a new way to experience the world. I mean, it's nearly 15 years. That's insane. I gotta be real with you, this is probably one of the most egregious mishandlings of IP in gaming. The idea of a corporate overlord breathing down Bethesda's neck doesn't necessarily sound at first like the most creatively emboldening strategy, but at the same time, the IP that has put Bethesda on the map has functionally been dormant for 15 years. Yeah, I know, ESO, but it's not the same. It contributes to keeping the community alive, but it does not replace the phenomenon that was the Elder Scrolls single-player experience.
He says Bethesda should make races feel distinct, like the races were in Oblivion and Morrowind, and have huge impact on how the role-playing and gameplay turn out. But loses the plot a sentence in and starts yapping about his imaginary solution that again dilutes the races and demotes them to barely superficial choice that simply becomes irrelevant after leaving character creation apart from the 3D model used. And there is no way current year Microsoft Bethesda would implement cultures like in Tamriel Rebuilt and subraces. Let's be real, that amount of imagined complexity would not produce outcome we want, but a shortcut solution that makes all those even more superficial and homogenized. There it is in the racial bonus to skills and racial attributes screen, the intricate details about Imperial race. But there was no attributes in Skyrim. No attributes in Starfield either. Your orc character will not have high strength attribute. That's because of the political activists at Microsoft.
I'm 30 years old. I was 15 when Skyrim came out. I've been waiting for an Elder Scrolls 6 for half my life now. You really had to be there to understand how insane the release of Skyrim was. Everyone was getting into it. I was always into the fantasy and sci-fi type stuff, the nerdier side of gaming and fantasy and fiction and stuff. Some of my first gaming experiences, aside from Pokemon, was Warcraft 3 and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on PC. It was a different demographic to the casual GTA, Call of Duty, weekend shooter vibe. They're great, but when Skyrim was coming out, I distinctly remember being surprised about the amount of people who were talking about it and were getting into it. Like, it brought in people who I wouldn't have guessed would have touched a game like this. This was back in the days when there was like one meme format for 3 months, and that was the internet. The Harry Partridge animated Skyrim video, Fusrodar memes, arrow to the knee. That was the internet back then. It's crazy to think how long it's been. Also, the amount of goodwill Bethesda has lost since Fallout 76 in 2018 is just wild. Anyways, I say all this because the legacy of Skyrim is massive and it's built an immense community that has been starved for well over a decade. The Oblivion remaster was really nice, a well-needed CPR for the Elder Scrolls, but at the same time, it's a game that many of us have played many times before. It's not new to us.
Small Bosmer thief girl or big orc warrior, that's all the same to them. That's cultural Marxism of current year applied to destroy video games. Hope for 2030. How many of hopefuls died since 2011? Some kids born in 2011 will be adults by the time TES6 is released. Why not 2028 with a new Xbox Helix as a launch title? Why not crunch and make developers actually work hard? Because they, them, hate game development. They hate gamers. They hate video games. Return to form. Having a blast. Always remember these words. It's from the Shillbook Manual for online shills, bots, NPCs to repeat ad nauseum. This guy is a Skyrim first kid.
There is a community of awesome modding projects, and I mean no shade when I say this, but they are for the most part in a perpetual state of coming out. Beyond Skyrim Bruma came out in 2018, and that was awesome, but we've been hungry since. Funnily enough, one of the most consistently active modding projects is not for Skyrim, but for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Tamriel Rebuilt is a modding project that has been ongoing since before Morrowind even released, an ambitious plan to include the entirety of the mainland Morrowind in the game as it was originally intended by Bethesda but had to be reduced because of the scope getting too grand. In recent years, the project feels more alive than ever and they've made great strides, especially with their most recent Grasping Fortune release, which covers the southern city of Narsis. The expansion of the world with so much possible content, so many places to see, it allows you to live in this world, to decide your own adventure. A fantasy simulator. When I play Morrowind, I hardly ever spend any time on Vardenfell. Instead, I explore the vastness of Tamriel Rebuilt. And then you also have the Project Tamriel modding projects, which aims to bring all of Tamriel into the Elder Scrolls 3. They've previously released a portion of Skyrim in the Home of the Nords expansion, and more recently Cyrodiil got a release. The city of Anvil and the Gold Coast region. What I find incredibly interesting about these mods is that they treat the lore as it was at the time of the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, meaning the jungle Cyrodiil and Skyrim you see are very different to the later incarnations of canon Elder Scrolls. They lean more heavily into the unique and weirder lore that made Morrowind what it was. But as time goes on and Bethesda has gone the way it has, taking this long to make Elder Scrolls 6, and especially with the loss of Kurt Kuhlman and other legacy staff, I'm less interested in strict corporate canon. Of course, we are a channel that makes Elder Scrolls lore videos in which we use canon sources unless stated otherwise, but personally, I find myself less and less interested in canon and am just more interested in possibilities, theories, character experiences. When you sit back and look at the sheer amount of creativity the folks behind the Tamriel Rebuilt and Project Tamriel projects have done, it's just incredible. I've said this before in a podcast, I think, but given the amount of time between the entries, I won't be surprised if the Elder Scrolls 6 feels like a sort of soft reboot of the series. This could be a very bad thing, but it could also be good. This is ancient history now, but the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind was a pretty significant reboot of the Elder Scrolls franchise. It's a continuation, yes, but compared to Daggerfall, it shifted the vibe of the whole world in a whole new direction, away from a more typical fantasy that was a very 90s D&D type experience. The lore established in the first Pocket Guide to the Empire and the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard game was the first step to overhauling the vibe, and Morrowind completely cemented the 21st century Elder Scrolls feel. I sometimes fear that Bethesda, especially the Bethesda of today, won't really understand the core appeal of the Elder Scrolls, or they won't really get the lore in the same way. Then again, there are likely people at Bethesda who joined as fans of the Elder Scrolls and then joined, so perhaps there's people who started as part of the Elder Scrolls community and now they actually work on the games. And look, Todd Howard is still there. And arguably there has been a correlation between BGS game quality and his direct level of involvement. Todd Howard, as the face of Bethesda, often gets the pies thrown at him for every bad thing Bethesda does, and many of those criticisms are very fair. But we gotta remember that Todd was also the one who made Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. He's been at the helm for a long time. Credit where credit is due. He does know how to make a great game. He was at the helm of the generational run that was Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Skyrim. This may seem callous, but perhaps the layoffs at Bethesda might take off some of the managerial load. Many of the complaints of staff that have left is that the company grew so big it became increasingly bureaucratic and it was hard for people to have the same impact when they were busy managing people. A situation where Todd Howard is able to make more decisions and have more input on the game, based on history, is likely to be a good thing. The other big challenge Elder Scrolls 6 has is that the nature of gaming is just a different beast today. Open worlds are a dime a dozen, and games like Cyberpunk 2077 have put out worlds with incredible detail, art direction, and atmosphere. Baldur's Gate 3 has pushed mainstream tolerance for RPG complexities and shown that people love choice and consequence, that people hunger for fantasy RPGs. And it's not just the new games that have come out. We'll likely have a Witcher 4, perhaps even Larian Studios' new RPG Divinity before we have Elder Scrolls 6, depending on the timeline. And these will all set new standards and new expectations. This is what the Elder Scrolls 6 will be compared to.
Morrowind's world, great as it was, is static. A testament to the hardware of its time. It runs on a Pentium 3, 256 megabytes of RAM, and a GeForce 2 GPU. But the rooted NPCs wait for you, the player, to arrive and make things happen. In Oblivion, the Radiant AI sets on their own paths and schedules, so the world feels more alive. But that approach is much harder to program and compute. Modern Bethesda showed it can produce quantity in Starfield with 1,000 planets, but it's mostly procedurally generated slop. TES6 will follow suit. It will not be handcrafted, curated fantasy world to experience like the Wardenfell Island of Morrowind. Kurt Kullman will be replaced by Emil Pagliarulo and a comedy of feminists, pink hair liberals and lesbians, such that ruined Dragon Age and Mass Effect.